Hello again, everybody. This is Steve coming to you with another Intro to Writing video. This one is about logistics. You're probably thinking, okay, where does that come into the story? Well, logistics is a system that runs in the background and makes the whole world work. It doesn't matter if it's a little town or a village or a city, a state, a country, a planet, a star system, an empire, a galactic empire. It doesn't matter. Logistics is going to be a key important part of that. And this isn't just, like merchants or battleships or things like that. This is the stuff that makes the big things work. Like without logistics, you can't have commerce. You can't have transportation. You can't have a military force. You can't have airlines because you have to supply food. You have to supply fuel. You have to supply parts. You have to take people from point A to point B. You have to take products from point A to point B. You're gonna, does not matter the kind of story you're writing. Logistics is going to play some part of that. It doesn't have to be something on the surface. It can be something that's subsurface, something that, basically you have. Well, let's just say, let's go into the fantasy part of things. You have an army of 20,000 people that are marching along. If you go back and research, well, even historically, if you go back and research the Roman Empire, you had the soldiers, and then you had the baggage carts. The baggage carts brought all the food, the extra supplies, the bandages, the tents. Everything that the army or the foot soldiers themselves could not carry went onto the baggage carts. If you destroyed the baggage carts, which was a good military strategy at the time, if you could destroy the baggage train, the baggage carts, etc., like that, you're going to take your enemy and just cripple them. Because the old saying is, an army marches on its stomach, which is a kind of a gentle nod to. It's a gentle nod to the logistics system, moving product, moving supplies, keeping things going. From the military aspect, it really depends on the particular individual military force, the arm, what branch of the military, what nation it is, as to how big and detailed the logistics train is. With the U.S. Army, I don't know about the Marines or the others. I just know about the Army. There is this whole ratio of 9-to-1. There's 9 people in the Army for every actual combat soldier, just to supply everything logistically. That's food, that's fuel, that's ammunition, supplies such as uniforms, battle dressings, all that kind of stuff. They'll provide navigation, communications. They will provide administrative functions. And administrative functions is still part of logistics because paperwork is an important part of the military. So your administrative people are going to be an important part of the logistics. In businesses, you've got the HR department. You've got, in some of the bigger ones, you might have a food service department. Well, then you've got a shipping and receiving department. You're going to have payroll. You're going to have accounting. You're going to have administration. Those are all different logistics things. Training is part of logistics because if you don't train your people, that will tend to hurt you. Because a well-trained person is an efficient person, is an effective person. Going back to the military, a well-trained soldier is a soldier that's very likely going to survive in a lot of situations that an untrained or poorly trained soldier would not. They're also more combat effective. Poorly trained or combat ineffective. They're likely to die, which means you got to replace them. You got to train up somebody else. So training is an important part of that. Thinking about airlines, you've got the mechanics, you've got the parts suppliers, you've got the Mechanics, maintenance guys. You've got the guys who fuel the planes. You've got the stewardesses. You've got the pilots. You've got all their training. You've got the people who book and manage the flights, who run the IT department, who supply the HR department. They and all these different things. That's all logistics. And logistics don't necessarily have to be like from source to destination. Does not all have to be the same person, same company, same anything. Because you look at just shipping. Let's say somebody ships something from China. You've got the original manufacturer, who then gives it to a shipper that brings it over to a shipping port. They arrange logistics there. Like they get it to the port. You might have the shipper who actually brings it there, and then you have the logistics individual, somebody who runs logistics, who coordinates that. They coordinate the pickup, and the shipper who picks it up. When it gets dropped off at the port, they coordinate which ship it goes on to and which port it's going to. That ship then takes it over, drops it off. That new port then hires another shipper that maybe takes it over to a train line, or a semi truck, and they take it over to a hub. Then that hub or that box that trailer either gets unpacked and reshuffled, and the contents get reshuffled into other trailers, or that trailer gets picked up by another shipper who's not the original, and it keeps going like that down the line until it finally gets to its destination. And there's a lot of moving parts in logistics. Logistics is not a simple point A, point B, or here's your hamburger, sir, or anything like that. There's a lot of logistics to that. For example, your groceries, the clothes you're wearing, the desk you have in front of you, the amount of logistics that was involved in that for the raw materials, the parts, the labor, everything like that. There's a lot involved with that. And if logistics breaks down, everything stops. I mean, any of you that remember the supply chain issues we had back during COVID, you saw how a lot of stuff just ground to a halt because they did not have the materials or the end product or whatever it was to keep supplying people. Now, they kept the supply chains open, but the supply chains were very, very heavily strained. Logistics was a frickin' nightmare. The ports backed up because they didn't have enough shippers. There were middlemen that couldn't keep up with the inflow of stuff, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, logistics is going to be a big, important part of it. Now, one good area to research this with, to get ideas, and you can take a lot of modern ideas and move them into fantasy, just change how that is applied. Like, do you have somebody who here's a good one for your fantasy stuff that would be an easy bit of research. Go in and research the Silk Road and how they did carting and logistics in the Middle Ages and in the 1600s, 17, 1800s, the canal boats, the sailing ships. There was stuff that was brought in by camel and mule. More modern times, you have everything from the high-end stuff I was mentioning with the ships and the trains and things, and then you have in the Vietnam War, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That was just a bunch of people with backpacks and bicycles carting things from point A to point B. That was a logistics train, that worked for the Viet Cong. Then you have the what was it? Well, you've got like what the Romans did. The Romans did a whole combination of that. They did mules, they did carts, they did people. Just there's a whole intricate system that they had for all of their logistics. Now, a lot of their logistics were very localized, because the longer the distance, the more difficult the logistics, and the more primitive the technology and the slower the transport, the more difficult long distance logistics become. So a lot of their stuff was very locally sourced. So that's something you got to consider, that the lower the level of technology, the more localized your supply chain. The higher level of technology, the more diverse it can become. Because, like going to my Earthfleet saga, for example, or the Earthfleet universe for that matter, you have a galactic society. Basically, the whole Milky Way is full of different races. The logistics with that is you have your local supply chains, and then for specialty items you have your regional supply chains. And the more special and the more valuable and the more expensive, the further out those supply chains get, because what you have to look at is, what is the value of the item being shipped. If it is a bar of gold and the person on the destination end really, really, really needs that bar of gold, they're willing to pay the expense to get it there. But the further out that you have to go with something, the more expensive that the transport of it becomes, and therefore the value goes down because it becomes the more expensive item. And let's just say automobiles. Which is more practical for me, to go down the street to the car dealer and buy a vehicle, even if it's not quite the vehicle I want, or that I go 2 states over to get the exact vehicle I want, but at 30-40% more cost? Well, to me, it's going to, even though I want that one that's 2 states away, it's more practical for me to go down the street and take a little bit of a hit as far as the type of car I want than it is to go 2 states away, unless, say, it's a sports car, something that has a high ticket value. Now it's, now if I can't get it locally and the only place I can get it is 2 states away, now it's more, practical for me to go that 2 states away, buy that vehicle and bring it back. So anyways, that's like one good example of, value to logistics. Something else I could think of here. Well, weather is definitely going to screw with your logistics. You can have, depending on the situation, you can have bandits and thieves that break up the supply line. If it's military, or if it's military oriented, maybe the enemy's in there carpet bombing your supply lines, and you're unable to feed your troops, so therefore you can't push the offensive. If it's some guy doing business trips, is the logistics there might be him getting onto an airliner. Is the airline too expensive, or is it reasonably priced? How fast does he need to get there? Therefore, is the ticket worth it? And if he flies there, can he fly directly, or does he have to use multiple forms of transportation? Here's a situation where that I've had to do. I had to go out to Las Vegas twice for CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. And for me, the logistics in that situation was, I had to get the hotel, I had to get the airplane tickets, but then I also had to get to the airport. And the only airport I could get to was in Detroit. Well, I could get to other ones. There were other ones, but then I'd have to take a couple extra hops, and it would cost a bunch of extra money. So for me, it was more practical to have somebody drive me to Detroit, get on the plane, fly down, take one of the local, I would call them a taxi bus, because they're a bus, but they act like a taxi. They run people from hotels to airports and back again. They're kind of neat, actually. They're almost like a dial-a-ride, but they act like a taxi. But anyways, when I got off the airplane, I had to go get myself one of those buses, and then they took me over to the airport, the hotel, and then eventually from the hotel back to the airport, and then from the airport to Detroit, and I got picked up and taken home. But then while I was in Las Vegas, my best method of transportation at the lowest cost was just to get off my dead butt and walk to the different places, which, believe me, if you're ever in Vegas, don't walk. It's a little expensive for the transportation down there, but the distance between buildings will absolutely kill you. You're talking miles and miles of walking, even though it doesn't look like it. But anyways, that's a situation of logistics. You are using public transportation via airlines, vehicles. When I say public, I'm not talking like the public buses and stuff like that. I'm talking about transportation that the public in general uses: airlines, trains, buses, whatever. It doesn't have to be government controlled and sponsored transportation like the the subway and the bus system and stuff like that. It can be it could be an airplane. It could be a Greyhound. It's anything that's available to the public. And like I said, logistics are how do you get from point A to point B successfully, and what do you employ in the process. So you're employing logistics all the time. Driving, getting in your car and driving to the grocery store and back is logistics. You seek to acquire food, therefore you take your vehicle over to the grocery store. You collect your groceries, you pay for them, you put them in your car, you bring them back home, you put them on the shelf. That's logistics. You are surrounded by logistics every day. You are dealing with logistics every day. The internet is a form of logistics. It's bringing information from a remote source to your local source through an internet connection. Your network, and then you've got your network involved, your routers, your switches, your cabling, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. And, like I say, just think about it, research it, look into what will work for you. And that also goes for sci-fi writers. You're going to have to, move stuff back and forth on a planet. You're going to have to move stuff between planets. You're going to have to supply starships. So that's something to think about with your stories. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, etc., as usual, please feel free to let me know. I'm always up for answering your questions, coming up with extra videos to answer questions if need be, or just help you out any way I can with your story writing and figuring out what you want to do, how you want to do it, all of the nuts and bolts and the other details on what you need to do in your world to make things work. So anyways, I'll catch you guys later.